I have a 27-inch or 28-inch guitar and I want to go to drop low E, and what string should I use?
I'm like, you shouldn't use those guitars at all.
Stuck with the bun.
Hello, I'm the Bun and welcome to my channel. This is Stuck with the Bun, and this is a show where we talk about things that you're stuck on, that I'm stuck on, that I've been stuck on, and hopefully we will get unstuck. Today we're gonna try and answer the never-ending question of what strings should I use? If you were them, what would you do if you love this channel?
I'd probably subscribe.
Makes sense?
Definitely.
It is like an ongoing thing, both on this channel and as well on the Baritone Obsessed Facebook group. There are tons of questions about what strings should I use on my baritone to go to XYZ tuning and all this sort of stuff. And I've done 2 videos on strings in the past already. I did one on what strings should I use, and don't use what I use what you need to use. And I did another one that was I think it was also Stuck with One? No, it was a Baritone Obsessed one. And it was a comparison of a whole bunch of different baritone string manufacturers. You can check those 2 videos out. The links are down below in the description. But today we're gonna go through all of the stuff to consider in choosing strings for you. It's not about what I tell you to use. It's not about what anybody tells you to use. It's about the conclusion that you arrive at in terms of what is gonna be best for your circumstances. And in the words of the famous Chad Woods, one of the admins over at Baritone Obsessed Facebook group, you gotta just try stuff and experiment and have fun with the experiment and try and figure out what's gonna be best for you. Before we get into the strings themselves, we gotta address a few things. If your frets are level and the neck is straight and the action is set and the intonation is set and the nut is cut properly, then you can judge whether or not the strings are truly suited to what you're doing. Of course, there are extremes, like if the strings are just way too loose, they're way too loose, or if they're way too tight and way too giant, they're way too tight and way too giant. Sometimes people end up overcompensating because the guitar is not set up, and then they're like, why do I have so much string buzz? Why do I have terrible sustain, etc.? Most of those things have to do with the setup. You know, there is very extreme setup type of stuff like plecking or plecked. I'm not gonna get into that. You can Google that. The word is here, plecked. Yeah, you want to be set up in order for the strings to perform right. The second thing that a lot of people don't really consider, that they don't take seriously, and that's what this channel is kind of all about, is scale length. Scale length is crucial. There are a lot of people who are trying to do something with a scale length that the result is always going to be poor. They're like, why isn't my 25.5 or my 27 or even my 28-inch scale baritone tuning down to low E or double drop C or whatever, like going super, super low? And the reason is the guitar's just too short. You know, yeah, you can tune the string to pitch, but it's not gonna perform well. You want like 30 inches in scale if you're gonna go down to E, like low E, or beyond. And I think going lower than low E, there's a whole bunch of problems you're just gonna have to deal with. Yes, you can do it, but it doesn't work very well. And it's not the strings. You can put it on giant strings, but it's always gonna be kind of poor because the guitar's not long enough. You need kind of like 34-inch scale guitar to go down to double drop C in a way that's gonna be flawless. So this channel is about going super low, but there are a lot of questions about higher tunings, you know, A, B, C, D, like very high. With those tunings, it's just the low string at a certain point that gets a little bit shaky. Like on a Gibson scale guitar, 24.75, B and A, the low B and A, if you're going that low, on those guitars, it's gonna be kind of crappy. It just is. 25.5, not too bad. For A, a little bit more scale length makes a huge difference. You know, 26.5 and 27 is great for A. Like, it just transforms the whole guitar. It's awesome. But the deal with those tunings, you know, the D, the drop D or standard D down to drop A or standard A, is that the first 5 strings on the guitar, on a 6 string, are gonna be totally within range. So those strings aren't really that big of an issue, that big of a challenge. It's only when we go to G and lower that the rest of the strings start to not perform as well as well. Number one thing to think about is what kind of feel do you like? Do you like extra light strings? Do you like light strings, medium strings, or heavy strings? The other thing to think about in terms of that is what is the weight? What is the tension at standard E tuning for those things? And we're gonna take that value, because that's a commonly known value, and we're gonna think about trying to achieve that same tension with a different tuning, a lower tuning, with a slightly heavier set of strings and a longer scale length. Later on in the video, we're gonna go and use the D'Addario string calculator to, put together a fantasy pack of strings and see what that's all about, because it's an amazing tool. Thank you to D'Addario for providing that to all of us. It's extremely useful. The tension across the strings for extra light strings is typically within the 12 to 13 pounds range, plus or minus a little bit, per string. With light, we have 15 to 17 pounds approximately. With medium, we're looking at about 17 to 20 pounds of pressure or tension across the set. And with heavy, we're looking at about 20 to 25 pounds of tension across the set. So important to know, especially if you're gonna use the string calculator, because you need to know what to shoot for, you need to know what your goal is. Tone, what kind of tone do you like? What is the tone you're shooting for? Are you shooting for a dead tone, a dark tone, a medium tone, a McDonald's tone that's just kind of like meh, and a bright tone? A lot of us baritone guys, we're looking for a brighter tone because the tuning is naturally very dark, so we want more cut and more presence and more richness, brightness up in the upper mids. So bright is often the target for a lot of low tuners, but it's up to you. If you want to go for that dead sound or that dark sound, you can do that too. You just have to decide, what do you like? There are different things that contribute to that spectrum of sounds. It could be like chromes. They're very dark or almost dead, sometimes very dead sounding. Nickel, it's in the middle, like we were saying. It's the McDonald's kind of tone. It's just meh, it's whatever. It's just there, it's a tone. It's good old trusty reliable. Stainless steel, very bright, extremely bright. Then there's hybrid materials. Strings that are constructed out of a multitude of materials. Could be stainless nickel and carbon steel. With hybrid, you're gonna have to just research that and try stuff out, because it's gonna be different from manufacturer to manufacturer. I couldn't tell you whose hybrids sound like what, because I like stainless steel strings, or nickel wound. There are brighter nickel wounds than others, like the Kurt Mangan nickel wounds are much brighter than D'Addario's, and I like those. They have more cut and they're just more full-bodied and more cut. And that's what I'm looking for, but maybe you want something totally different. Another thing with tone is the actual gauge. So extremely heavy strings are gonna be more dead or more dark, and generally lower sustain as well. And then lighter strings are gonna be brighter, typically. However, if the lighter strings are under tension, like lower tension than the optimum tension for that string, then they will be darker and kind of dead as well, with low sustain. So those are things to think about. The third string, on heavier string sets, if you have an unwound, a plain third, it's usually gonna be a lot more dead than the rest of the strings. Something to really watch out for there. A wound third is gonna be brighter than a plain third with a really heavy gauge string set. Hands. You need to think about your hands. This is like a very overlooked thing. Nick Hill, he just did a strings video as well. It was a string comparison of two different brands. Nick was using the NYXLs and he was having huge problems with corrosion. And he realized that his hands were a little bit sweatier and maybe a little bit oilier than a lot of other people's hands. And this is a thing, it's a very common thing. I have a lot of friends that have really oily hands, and I actually don't want them to play my guitars because they'll kill my strings instantly. They'll pick it up and the strings will be dead after they play it. What kind of hands do I have? Do I have dry skin? Do I have medium, kind of just like normal moisture hands? Or do I have oily, more sweat producing hands? The more sweat production you have, the more challenging in terms of string longevity and a continuous tone or a consistent tone for a duration of time. Thinking about string construction like carbon steel, just plain steel strings, if you have oily hands, they will die immediately. They will not last at all. With nickel and stainless wound strings, typically the first, second, and third, if it's a unwound third, like a plain third, but the first and second for sure are usually just carbon steel strings. So they will die really fast if you have oily hands. But if you have coated strings, you're good. So with the carbon steel, if you have dry hands, you're good. If you have average, moisture hands, they will corrode fast enough within a week. I use usually nickel wound or stainless steel strings. The high strings are carbon steel, and after a week, they're toast. I don't know, I love the sound of brand new strings, so I am never complaining if I have to change my strings, other than if it's right in the middle of recording and I'm like, man, this tone sucks. Skin. What kind of skin do you have, dude? Like, you need to think about that before you make a decision what strings are for me. I have a 27-inch or a 28-inch guitar and I want to go to drop low E, and what strings should I use? I'm like, you shouldn't use those guitars at all. But that's why we're here. That's why we have this channel. That's why we're doing this thing, because a lot of people don't know, and they're honest questions. How long is your guitar? What's your scale length? What do you got to work with? Do you have a 26.5? Do you have a 27? Do you have a 27.75? Do you have a 28? Do you have a 28.625? Do you have a 29.625? Do you have a 29.75? Do you have a 30? What do you have? Because that has everything to do with the tuning that is available to you that is gonna be awesome. And you don't have to use overcompensation for your strings, like use extra giant strings to get it to even remotely work. Because extra giant strings, the tone is usually terrible. What tunings fit with those scale lengths optimally? If you're in drop D to standard D, doesn't really matter. 24.75 to 26.5, totally fine. It's gonna work. 26.5 is gonna be slightly better, or 25.5 is gonna be slightly better. People ask me, should I get the Chapman to do drop D? I'm like, no, you totally shouldn't. Drop C, standard C, kind of the same thing, 25.5 to 26.5. Drop B, 25.5 to 26.5 to 27. Drop A, standard A, 27, 27.5. Drop G, standard G, 28 to 28.625. Going even longer is even nicer. I have some 28 or 29.75 inch guitars, and they're awesome in G. Awesome, but the strings are so light. It's like, butter, I can just shred. I can't actually shred. But my legato is way better. Drop F, standard F, 28.625 to 29.75. Great, awesome. Low E, or standard E, like going an octave down, like a bass of standard bass range, but with a guitar tone, 29.75 to 30 inch. The Jazzmaster, the Gretsch Electromatic, the Dan Electros, those are all great. So the things to think about in order are, what is the feel that you like? What is the tone that you like? What kind of skin do you have? How long is your guitar? Like, how long is the scale length? What kind of tuning do you want to tune to? Right, so we're at the desk and we're gonna put together a really sick string set. So we're gonna take a look at two different string calculators, one from D'Addario and as well one from Stringjoy. We're gonna focus on the D'Addario one, but the Stringjoy one is also good. I have a preference for the D'Addario one specifically for this tutorial because we can set the tension and it will tell us what the gauge is. With the Stringjoy calculator, we have to set the gauge in order to get the tension, whereas with the D'Addario one, we have the option to go both ways. So we're gonna go with the tension to see what the gauge is gonna be. You can use either, if you prefer to use Stringjoy strings, use their calculator because it's gonna be more accurate. Something to think about with these calculators is that they are specific to the manufacturer, and different manufacturers are gonna use different kinds of materials or different construction methods. And it's just very slight differences but those differences are going to have an effect on tension. So if you're using one of these calculators to buy another manufacturer's strings, for example, if you use the D'Addario calculator to purchase Kurt Mangan strings to kind of get it in the ballpark, that's all you're going to get is the ballpark. That's something to think about in terms of using these calculators. You're just kind of getting an idea. So I'm using the NYXLs as the example in terms of getting our tension. That is our first goal. What is tension at E standard tuning with a light set? We're gonna pick regular light, bam. 10 to 46. If we go to this learn more here, we're gonna get the tension in pounds. So depending on what region of the world you're in, this may be kilograms, this may be pounds. Right now it's in pounds, but yesterday it was in kilograms. I don't know. Regular light set seems to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 16.5. It's like 15.3 up to 18.9 for their regular light set. This is not really a balanced tension set, but whatever. We're gonna shoot for 16.5 for a regular light set. If you need to convert this, you can just go to the Google here, pounds, 16.5, bam. So 7.4 kilograms or 7.5 kilograms, really, 0.48, and 16.5 pounds. So this is what we're gonna shoot for with tension and gauge for a 28-inch scale guitar tuned to G standard. Get started, bam. Base your custom set off of existing D'Addario strings. No. Guitar, yes. Select instrument, electric guitar. Next is configuration. We're gonna select 6-string because the bun is all about 6-string baritones and nothing more. Here we go. Do we wanna change our scale length? Yes. We'll go inches and we're gonna go 28, bam. Enter, apply to all. Here we go, 28-inch scale, continue. Do you want to change your tuning? Yes, we're gonna go down to G and we're gonna keep it in sharps. If you don't understand sharps and flats, I would get acquainted with that. That's probably a good idea. There are 12 tones in the Western music system. And if we use A to octave A as the example, it's like A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. So that's all the sharps. If you go backwards, you could go flats. You don't really have to go backwards, but just reverse everything to do the flats. So in this drop-down menu, it doesn't have the tuning we're looking for. You know, open G major, that's not what we want. We want G standard, and we have note and octave. Knowing what octave the pitch of the string resides in is very important for this. This is E standard, we're gonna go down to G standard. Most of these are gonna change. Some of them won't, but most of them will. It goes from highest to lowest. The highest string is going to be G. Where are you, G? There you are. And this is gonna go down an octave to the 3rd octave. Next note is going to be D, and it will stay in the same octave. Next is A sharp, and we're gonna go down an octave. Bam. Next is F, and we are going to go down an octave. Bam, 2nd octave. Next is A, we're gonna go down to C, bam. And that is gonna stay in the same octave. And finally we have G, and G is gonna go down an octave as well. Now that we have our tuning, we can continue. Construction, this might be confusing to some people. It says homogeneous. Homogeneous just means plain. We're gonna wanna change the construction of the 3rd string to round wound. And then we want to change the material to nickel-plated steel. Great, awesome, continue, wham. So now we want to set our tension or our gauge. So looking at our regular light gauge strings, we see it going from about 16 to 18.9, 19 pounds. So our target is, I guess, gonna be about 16.5, 17. Let's go 17 pounds of tension, somewhere in between. Back to the calculator, we're gonna go with tension. Bam. And this is gonna give us our gauges. It's gonna be great. Let's go 17. Copy that, Control C, bam. You're gonna have to let the string calculator catch up with you every time. It sort of refreshes, bam. So let's get results. open all of these up so we can see what we selected. Great. We have a 16, a 21, a 29, a 39, 53, and a 70 for our ultimate gauges. Some of these gauges, for me personally, I know are too heavy. So, for example, the tension and gauge for the highest G, it is too high. 16 is just way too big for me. So we're gonna go down. There we go. We're gonna go with a 14 gauge, 13.5 pounds of tension. That's good enough for me. It's very light. So for gauges, we got 14, 21, 29, 39, 53, and 70. Maybe this 21 can come down here. There. 13, 15, 17, 16, 16, 16. Maybe we'll take this 29 down a bit as well. 16, that looks a little better. What's our final result here? Our final result is gonna be 14, 20, 28, 39, 53, and 70. That's the gauges that I'm gonna go for if I was gonna build a D'Addario set. And I would just try this with other sets if I could build a custom set as well. So let's check this on the Stringjoy calculator and see what we end up with. 14, 28, 7. So this is the closest we can get in terms of what is available with Stringjoy. We get a much different kind of thing. We also have some different string gauges, but we can go, you know, that's a 14.9 pounds of tension. Let's go down to a 19 here, 15. 17, 17. That looks good to me. So if I was doing a Stringjoy set, I would personally go for 14, 19, 28, 38, 52, and 70. Stay tuned, go low, subscribe! Do you think they should still subscribe?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, totally. Get into it. So I think that's it. I hope it all makes sense. Let me know if you're having trouble with it, and maybe I can help you. And maybe some of the people in the Baritone Obsessed Facebook group could help you as well. If you join the group, please answer the entry questions because you will not get in if you don't answer the questions. You'll probably get a faster response if you go to the group because I have very limited social media time. All of the things that I'm doing, I just can't be on social media very much. We're not going to be going into the 411 in this episode because we're going to be taking 411 back to its own show for a while, up until I think January. And the reason being is because I'd like to finish a whole bunch of Stuck with the Buns and a whole bunch of Baritone Obsesseds so that I have some in the bank, so to speak, because you guys deserve more. You keep showing up, especially people at Patreon. All of you at Patreon, you definitely deserve way more. If the rest of you guys are interested in that, interested in what's going on here, and you want to, you know, support more, you want to foster the growth of more, you can also do that by music, you know, downloading music, streaming music. Also merch. I have merch for sale on my website, thebun.ca. I don't think anyone really goes to my site. If you want to watch all the Stuck with the Buns and all the Baritone Obsessed in order, you can do it there very easily. And also there's a lot of content there, thebun.ca. It's a nice site too. It's like really nice.